Support for Swan Song is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. The Japanese game industry is known for occasionally marketing their games with really unique genres, and this episode's game is the only gag venture RPG I've ever heard about. It's Time Bokan series Bokan Densetsu Buta mo Odaterya Doronboo. It was developed by Alpha Unit, published by Banpresto, and released on April 27, 2000. Alpha Unit is a little-known Tokyo-based game developer founded in July of 1995. They primarily worked on a contract development basis for a variety of large publishers, with most of their output being for either Banpresto in the early years, and later Konami Digital Entertainment. They also did release a few original games of their own, such as the two titles in the Darts Wii series, as well as the critically panned DSi-exclusive cartridge game Monster Finder, released internationally as Photo Showdown. Their most recent original title is Whip Whip for the Nintendo Switch and Steam, released back in 2018, which is an incredibly cute homage to Taito's Bubble Bobble series of arcade games, even featuring music by Kosio from Zuntata. Alpha Unit's Japanese Wikipedia page claims that the company suspended their activities in 2021, but I can't find anything public that corroborates that. The company website is still up and running at time of recording, but it hasn't been updated since mid-2018 when the Steam release of Whip Whip went live. The Time Bokan series is a comedic science fiction franchise produced by the anime studio Tatsunoko Productions, dating all the way back to 1975. The franchise consists of 13 televised anime series, the most notable being Yatterman, which serves as the setting for this game. While each series in the franchise is isolated from the others, Time Bokan is perhaps most known for what remains constant amongst all of them. Each series has its own terrible trio of incompetent villains, comprised of a female lead, a smart member, and a muscular member. The trio was always composed of different characters typecast into those three roles, and for a span of 33 years, each of those roles had an assigned voice actor that would remain constant from one series to the next. Of all the terrible trios, the Doronboo gang from Yatterman is considered to be the most iconic and beloved iteration of the trope within the franchise. The attractive Doronjo, the mech builder Boyaki, and the strongman Tonzura make up the trio, and served as a direct inspiration for a ton of terrible trios across media from that point on, most notably Team Rocket from the Pokemon animated series. It didn't really make sense to me why a game about a bunch of villains from a 1977 anime was being released seemingly out of nowhere in the year 2000, but after doing my research it became clear that the Doronboo gang has more cultural relevance and staying power than any of the actual protagonists of the anime to begin with, and with spin-off media about them continuing to be released semi-regularly to this day. In a completely non-derogatory way, I must state that Yatterman is an incredibly formulaic villain of the week style series featuring new mechs assembled by the Doronboo gang on a weekly basis. Let's be honest, how many anime or TV series can you name that have an entire section of their Wikipedia page devoted to detailing the 8-point formula that every single episode follows? It shouldn't be much of a shock to anyone then that the game maps onto that same episodic structure, complete with narrator intros and outros. In the game's introduction, we're introduced to the Doronboo gang and their leader in the shadows, Dokurobe. Dokurobe informs them of the discovery of a golden nugget worth so much that it could potentially be used to buy up the entire Earth at once, but then clarifies that this nugget could only be obtained by someone who already holds 3 mysterious items known as T-parts. Now if that didn't sound video gamey enough for you, turns out Dokurobe knows that there's a map already indicating those 3 T-part locations, so that's what he tasks you with locating at the start of the game. At its core, this game is a mech building and part collection RPG. By winning battles and exploring the world, the Doronboo gang can buy and or collect mech parts. While part prices do seem steep at the start of the game, battles award far more money than you'd expect, so all things considered, they're not too bad. Your mech has 5 different customization surfaces onto which parts can be mounted. These shapes are made up of blocks, and each part is a particular shape which can't be rotated, also occupying a set number of blocks. As you accumulate more parts in different shapes, managing your mech's customization options becomes a puzzle in which you try to simultaneously use as many blocks as possible and also maximize your stat gain per block. I think I'm doing a bit of a poor job of describing this, but all the Mega Man Battle Network players in the audience will get it immediately if I just say it's a much less cool and more primitive version of the Navi customizer system. At first blush, the way that battles are presented in this game reminded me immediately of another mech customization game on the WonderSwan, that being Medarot Perfect Edition remakes that we covered back on episode 19. Especially when it comes to the scrolling battle animations showcasing the big sprites for your mech and the enemy. Each of the customization surfaces on your mech has a weapon attached to it, and while initially these will all seem equally effective, that will quickly end as you run into enemies that have different resistances or a higher likelihood of countering certain weapons, forcing you to put some thought into your weapon usage. Much like any other RPG, you gain experience for completing battles which are automatically cashed in for level ups when you reach a certain threshold. Instead of leveling up your mech though, you're asked to choose which of the 3 members of the Doronboo gang will level up. Each member has their own associated stat. Speed for Doronjo, attack for Boyaki, and defense for Tonzura. This isn't really any different than allocating stat points in one of 3 stats like in any other RPG, but this does so in a way that's far more character-centric than it normally would be presented. Beyond the main story mode, connecting a link cable opens the door to 1v1 and 3v3 battles against another friend with a copy of the game, or the possibility of trading parts back and forth amongst each other. Having no prior familiarity with yatterman, it became immediately apparent why the Doronboo gang left such a lasting impression on the anime world. They're just a lovable trio of goofball villains with incredibly charming dialogue, dripping with personality, and somehow they remain incredibly expressive either as their bigger character portraits or their tiny 16x16 map sprites. I completely understand how they came to overshadow the yatterman protagonists who have so little going on in comparison. As I approach the midway point in the WonderSwan's game library in a few months from now, I feel more comfortable holding this game up as an example to push back against the overarching narrative in the West that the WonderSwan game library is one defined by a ton of bad licensed anime games. Because seriously, where are they? So many of the licensed anime games I've played as part of this series are perfectly serviceable games, and Bokan Densetsu is no exception. There's nothing revolutionary about it, it's merely a by-the-numbers implementation of a somewhat niche RPG subgenre that benefits greatly from just how lovable its cast of characters turns out to be, whether you happen to be an existing fan or not. I'm told it has some cool fan service if you're a wider fan of the Time Bokan franchise too. That sounds great. That sounds like it's meeting the minimum bar of what a licensed anime game should strive to be. This is also the case for most other anime games I've played in the years since I've started the series, and we haven't even gotten to the ones that are held in high regard yet. So I'm really tempted to dismiss this whole WonderSwan is a wasteland for bad anime games thing as a myth once and for all. That was pretty much the question I wanted to answer by doing this series in the first place, and I have a hard time seeing how it will go completely downhill from here. But hey, what do I know? I'm just one of the few people crazy enough to play through the system's whole library just to fact check something I've heard repeated without being questioned for most of my life. I sure hope I won't regret saying this in May when the Hunter x Hunter episode comes out.